Okay. How the time?
Okay. All right, we'll start again. Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to everyone who's joined us from the Middle East region, and a good day to our guests from other parts of the world. Thank you very much for joining us for the first online session of International Coaching Week hosted by the Oman chapter of ICF. Please note that this session is being recorded for members and non-members who may not be able to attend live. I'm Coach Anjana Lumba, Education and Programming Chair of the Oman chapter of ICF. Before we begin, a quick note on housekeeping. Please keep your microphones on mute during the session unless invited by the speaker to share your thoughts or insights. We encourage you to post your questions in the chat and the speaker will address them as time permits. By attending this session till the end, you attain 0.25 core competency and 0.75 resource development CCE certificates within 2 weeks. We would also greatly appreciate if you could take a few moments at the end of the session to complete the feedback form. And now it's my privilege to introduce our speaker for today's session, Coach Navid Nazemian. Did I pronounce that correctly, Coach?
That's correct. Nazemian, yes.
Nazemian, yes. So now, Coach Nazemian is an ICF accredited executive coach, CCE training provider, and best-selling author of Mastering Executive Transitions. He helps C-suite leaders and boards navigate high-stakes transitions with research-backed practical strategies. He's the author of the international best-selling Mastering Executive Transitions, which has guided leaders worldwide through high-stakes role changes and organizational transformations. Coach Navid's work is recognized for bridging the gap between leadership theory and practical executive coaching, making him a sought-after thought leader and speaker in the international coaching community. A very, very warm welcome, Coach Navid. Over to you now to dazzle us.
Thank you so much, Anjana. And I hope I can live up to this very high expectation that you have just set for everyone, including for myself. All right, good. So let me please know if you are able to see my slides. Give me a thumb up, either the virtual or yeah, perfect. Okay, good. So yeah, that's our topic today, executive transition coaching. And I am delighted to see that I can spot at least a certified transition coach on this call, Farzeen Ashik. And Farzeen, just so you know, as a heads up, all the tricky questions I get, I will gladly send your way, because I think you're a much more competent coach than I will ever be. All right, good. So I saw this on a recent call with Michael Bange-Stanier. You know, there are coaches like me, and then there are coaches like Marshall Goldsmith, Michael Bange-Stanier. Think of, if you were a cook, of Gordon Ramsay and the like. So it's a different category altogether. And on that call, I think there were 20 coaches dialed into the call. He did something really interesting with us. He said, okay, guys, we have a 90-minute, lunch and learn was supposed to be, it was very late my time, together. I would like to ask you the following. On a scale from 1 to 7, how focused are you planning to be? No judgment whatsoever. Now, this is my first task for you today. If you were courageous and brave enough to type in a number from 1 to 7 into the chat as to what is your actual intent of focus for this session. And allow me to, as you type it in, I give you an example. One is, look, it's 7:07 my time here in Dubai. I'm actually preparing dinner for the kids. I am also working on the last bits of my landing page as a coach. Occasionally, I may be looking at what you are telling us. And then a 7 is, I will give you my undivided attention, and I have made sure that nothing will get in the way. Now, Let me see what the numbers are saying. Okay, I see five, sixes, and sevens. Oh my goodness, I see a nine. That is fantastic. Now, I saw a one as well. No judgment applied. All I'm asking you is what he asked us to do, which is what is the one level adjustment up from your original number you are prepared to make? And I'm going to give you my one level adjustment up. I just took my phone and went into do not disturb mode, which means that even my wife cannot reach me for the next hour or 52 minutes to come. All right, good. So let's get into it then. You saw the pre-course to this webinar. We will be focusing on three things. One is what is actually executive transition coaching? Why is it such an interesting prospect for us to look at? The second part is looking at, okay, how do we actually make sure that we guide those leaders using one of the frameworks that I have in store for you? It's called the Double Diamond. And thirdly, I would like to share with you, I mean, this is only an hour-long webinar, so I won't really be able to go into depth, but I want to share with you my top 4 tips around how I go about landing top-ticket clients, either as self-paying executives or sponsoring organizations. All right, good. So let's start with my why. And so this is me many, many years ago. This is actually in the year 2014, sitting in my tiny little home office at the time and thinking about, oh my goodness, we just had, I was an HR director at the time, we just had an unexpected and a spectacular failure of someone very senior we brought into our organization. And it was really painful also for me to see because I was part of the selection panel. I was one of the many people who said, yes, absolutely, that is the best leader we can choose for this particular position. And of course, they tanked 6 months into that position. So I thought, okay, you know what? I will do this the right way. Those of you who don't know me, I was born here in the Middle East, but I grew up in Germany, and this is why I refer to my German brain many times throughout our presentation today. So the German part of my brain said, okay, no problem. The issue has been identified. All I need to do now is to go and educate myself on how to avoid this disaster from ever happening again. And as you would do in the year 2014, there is the internet and there are the books. Those are the two really valuable resources to you. So I went out and started to type into the Amazon search engine all the words that I knew about this topic. And guess what? There was not a single book that I could buy that would educate me on this particular topic. And I was just not believing that. The first, the closest result I could get was the first 90 days. And those of you who know that book know that the subtitle of the same book says, successful onboarding strategies for leaders at all levels. And if a book has been written for anyone and everyone, it cannot be fit for purpose for the top level leadership. So that's when I thought to myself, you know what? I might as well write that book myself. Little did I know how hard it is to write a book, but that's subject for another webinar and another story of mine. It took me 7 years in total to write this book from start to finish. Now, if we have not connected yet, if you're genuinely interested in the topic, I have a weekly newsletter. It's entirely free of charge. I do not charge any fee for that. And if you did want to do that, currently subscribed by 8,000 executives, I would encourage you to hit me up. And that will make sure that above and beyond this one webinar, you stay connected to me and my thinking on the topic. Because as I'm sure you will appreciate, this is a topic that is a bit of an evergreen, but then there are aspects of the topic that are also constantly evolving. And that's what I write about once a week. Now, let's look at these two gentlemen. And I have to apologize to all the women on the call. It's just part of the reality that most of the executives in our today's world are white male individuals, 55 years and older. So Bob Chapek is the name of the gentleman on the left. He was hired by the wonderful Walt Disney Company as a young individual. He only had 4 years of experience when they hired him. And over the course of the next 26 years, they groomed Bob Chapek to become the second most important senior leader in the company. In his second last role, he was in charge of the theme parks of Walt Disney Group. If you've ever been to Walt Disney as a theme park, Paris, Miami, I think there is one in China or two. I'm not sure. Kuala Lumpur is another one. So you will have seen that it's a big business, right? And as a matter of fact, it's the largest revenue and profit driver for the Walt Disney Group. But they also have different kinds of businesses. I mean, those of you who are into watching series and movies, they have a Disney Plus product, which is an IPTV proposition. They have merchandising. I mean, if you have kids, we have a 10-year-old here, and his room is full of all sorts of different Disney superheroes and characters and swords and knives and what have you. Now, Disney saw everything they wanted to see, which is why they went ahead and appointed him to become the chief executive. Only 10 months in, not only did he tank, but it was such a delicate situation that the other gentleman on the right, his name is Bob Iger, had to step down from the board of directors to take over the CEO role, although he had retired from that seat when he handpicked his successor in Bob Chapek. And the reason why he did that was because Disney thought at that time, this is a highly risky appointment. If they were to take an external and put them into this jump seat of theirs. So some of you may be thinking, okay, this is just some random example, but the reality is, and you will agree with me very shortly, that this is no random example by any means. And it actually happens a lot more often than we in HR would like to admit, and that organizations would like to shout about to the outside world. Now, when I speak about transition, I mean the period which can last anywhere between 12 to 18 months after the executive has assumed the new C-level responsibility. And when I speak about successful ones, are not just the ones where the executive looks in the mirror and looks at their brilliant competence and say, great, I did it. But it's someone else, in this case, the chair of the board or the entire organization, agreeing that they were actually successful in delivering the objectives. So these are just two helpful definitions, which also means that when I speak about transitions, I do not mean getting married, getting divorced, giving birth to your first child, God forbid, losing a loved one that is dear and near to you, losing your beloved job, or anything like that. These are all life transitions, and they're a whole different category. I'm really looking at the niche definition of career transitions at the executive level. That's all I want to cover with you today. Now, those of you who have read the first 90 days may know that Michael Watkins, the author, the professor, also offers a training program. And it's actually designed for line managers, not for coaches. And so if you were to take him up on that training course, you see on the left-hand side, that's what the Transition Acceleration Advisor offers to you. And then if you are more like myself and you have done your generic leadership development coach training education, you will be quite familiar with what is often referred to as leadership development coaching or executive coaching or developmental coaching, more broadly speaking. What we do as transition coaches is to combine the best of both worlds, meaning some of what we do is scripted, phase-based, framework-based, and quite concrete. And other parts of what we do as transition coaches do tend to what is commonly referred to as leadership development coaches, where we look at behavior changes, where we look at behavioral insights using psychometrics, self-awareness, and all sorts of different tools to help the leader to make the shift from A to B. So as I said, as transition coaches, what we leverage is the best of both worlds. Now, this is why I claim that Bob Chapek is by no means an outsider or a random example. Heidrick& Struggles, one of the largest search firms in the world, a headhunter, commonly referred to, they placed 20,000 executives over a 10-year time period. And guess what? They found out that 18 months after those appointments were made, 4 out of 10 leaders did not make it. And so I think that's a large enough sample size to agree to the 40% number. But if you didn't want to take me up on it, Harvard Business Review, McKinsey, and Center for Creative Leadership have done their own studies, and they all come at the same conclusion. Now, this is why I would like to ask you to type into the chat, why do you think that is the case? Okay. Why do you think? Type in a word or a line and give me or give us an indication as to how come that is the case. Now, as you start to type this into the chat, allow me by saying that I've spent 20 years working in the HR function. And there's a lot of focus, attention, and energy that goes into this top-level appointments. They're never a individual decision by one individual. There are multiple interviews involved. There is a headhunter firm involved. The headhunter firm typically does their own background checking, screening, reference checking. They use sometimes their own psychometrics. Then at the C-suite, never one individual decides whether someone becomes the next CHRO or CEO. There's multitude of interviews. And despite all of this, 4 out of 10 don't make it. All right, so let's see what you have in mind as to why that may be the case. So, unfocused impatience. Wow, that's a mouthful. But I take that as a valid one. Unrealistic expectations. Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes unrealistic expectations by the executive themselves. Changing the world overnight, saving world hunger in a week, cleaning the oceans in a month. Well, guess what? Other people have tried and not quite achieved the same in the same time span. Not being prepared enough. Yes, Fazil, that is absolutely true. Vision and or values discrepancy. Yes, Mariana, that is absolutely true. Leila says, overwhelmed, unsure of where to start. Yes. That's actually the test that I do with certified transition coaches in training. It's the very first slide I put up, which says, if you were tomorrow to coach a CEO during their career transition, how confident are you that you know exactly where to start and how to support them? And it's a 1 to 10 scale. And then I measure the confidence score. And I repeat the same thing towards the end of the first day of training, and then repeat that towards the second day of training. And by then, I see a confidence score improvement of around 65% over the 4 cohorts after I've delivered this training program. So it's really also knowing exactly where to start and what to do. Expectations versus actuals. Yes, Keithana, that is absolutely true. Wrong fitment. Yes, I get that. I didn't know that word, but I guess I get what you are trying to get to. Prioritization. Yes, Lori. Mandeep speaks about VUCA. Yes, and there are other terminologies more popular than VUCA these days, but I get that the world is increasingly uncertain and complex and ambiguous. Mike says, no values clarity. Yeah, well, if you have made the wrong choice as an executive and you have said yes to a role that doesn't align with your values, it will be hard to be successful. Thank you so much. I will not be reading all the rest, but I think this is really speaking to Anjana, to the quality of the audience you have here. And Frazeen, I just want to congratulate you for that. Now, I have my own 12 reasons for why so many executives are failing. And the way I put that is that I find that today's executives are exponentially challenged and are finding themselves in a state of polycrisis. I mean, just think not that long ago when the war happened between Russia and Ukraine. Think about not that long a time ago when there was a shortage of chips or CPUs in certain industries. Think about not that a long time ago when the Trump administration put up some outrageous tariffs for all sorts of different countries around the planet. And you know, today is the 11th of May in the year 2026. We don't really have to go far to think about the regional conflict that was brought upon us without any of the leaders that we have in our coaching having any say or any control of this situation. So the reason I say that is because, you know, there may be challenges that are coming your way where you have absolutely zero influence or control over. I think it would be foolish for us to start to coach our clients on that. If anything, we can coach them on how to deal and be more resilient. But really, you cannot control those things. What you can control, though, is the fact that it's more likely that your functional/technical expertise will get you into your first C-suite executive role, but it's the lack of so-called soft skills that gets you fired pretty quickly on the back end of that. So in my book, I speak about the top 10 reasons for executive transition failure. But if I wanted to aggregate those 10 into 3 buckets, there would be people, culture, and politics. So it's the lack of the soft skills that is oftentimes getting in the way. And another reason, if I may cite Marshall Goldsmith, who was one of my mentors, is, you know, what he brilliantly wrote in one of his books. He has written 42 books by now, and this one book has outsold the other 41. That book is titled What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I think it's brilliantly pointing to the fact that it takes an entire new mix of skills and competency at the new level if you wanted to succeed at that. I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but I love a good sports analogy. If you assume that the 39 individuals on this call were all part of a big football club, you know, good old soccer, and we all are playing in the highest league of amateurs, let's say in Muscat in Oman. Let's call us the Muscat Coach Champions. That's the name of our team. If we were lucky enough to be promoted into the second highest league, so suddenly we are not playing at the amateur league anymore, but we are playing at the professional league. And typically, I don't know exactly about Oman, but there are 2 levels, sometimes 4 levels of Premier League teams involved. If we were to continue play the same way we played in the amateur league, that is a sure way that we will not survive the next season. Why? Because it takes an entirely different mindset, skills, and competencies to succeed at this new level of proficiency. And the exact same analogy applies to executive level leaders, especially using the same example if it's your first time that you're appointed into the C-suite. That is usually a very risky undertaking. That being said, there is no guarantee. If you have been successfully transitioning into CEO positions 5 times over, there is no such thing as a bulletproof vest that gives you the chance to succeed a 6th time. You may actually fail the 6th time around. And so those are just some reasons. And again, I think most of you really had shared great reasons for why that is the case. Now, you don't have to be a CFO to come to the conclusion that surely this is a very expensive undertaking, right? I mean, if 4 out of 10 executives are not making it, that must be a very expensive undertaking for the companies. And yes, it is. So this is the table of chief executive salaries in publicly listed companies in the UK. I'm just using the random example. A CEO of a mid-sized market cap company earns roughly £850,000 a year. That's just the base salary. It does not include the share bonus, the share allocations, the cash bonus, the car allowance, the pension, all the other perks they get. It's just the naked bonus. I claim in my book that if you were to fail at that level, the company is looking at 10 to 30 times your package in terms of the loss to the company. And so in this particular example, you're looking at a cost anywhere between 8.5 to 25.5 million pounds if that same executive in a mid-sized market cap company were to fail. Now, this is not an issue that is only haunting those poor performing companies or organizations. Again, I have spent 5 years researching this topic for my book. I have 156 citations in my book. The appendix is 22 pages long. And this particular part of the research was the easiest one. You just need to go on Google and type in epic CEO transition failures, and you will find a gazillion prominent examples of how they have messed up those top-level appointments. And the reason I selected these 4 companies is to make the point, which is you can be highly successful as an organization in your relevant industry, and that in itself does not give you immunity from getting this wrong every now and then, which is why the 40% number is universally applicable, no matter what company or what industry you're in. Now, one thing is also for sure, which is, okay, it's probably not a good money that Disney had to spend on the Bob Chapek failed CEO transition failure, $23.4 million at the time. But the reality is Disney is unlikely to go bankrupt as a result of that one payment. What is true, though, is that Bob Chapek never landed another job that was equally or bigger than the one that he just spectacularly failed at, which is why I claim that the highest cost of failure is actually paid by the executive and not necessarily by the organization. It's sad enough that the company has to chuck out some bad money after a bad hire, but it's even sadder to see that that executive, after a spectacular failure, is not being considered for top-level positions anymore, which also explains to you why roughly half of the clients that come to me to seek my coaching services are self-paying clients. And sometimes they don't even want the company to know that they are, using the services of mine. And they are happy to just invest out of their own pocket because they're smart enough to know what is really at stake here. And they don't want to take any risk and leave it to any chance. All right, good. So the good news is, congratulations. You have just been appointed to the new C-suite executive position. You have a beautiful corner office with beautiful views from the metropole that you are working and living from. The bad news is, especially if it's the CEO's role, you are the loneliest person in this entire organization. You do not even have peers to confide to anymore, because what used to be peers are now your direct reports, and you have your boss as the chair of the board. And so that is why this work that we do as transition coaching is real and really paying a dividend in all sorts of different directions. One of the things I want to say, which I alluded to earlier, is the fact that as certified transition coaches, of course, we leverage the modality of coaching more prominently. That being said, if that was all I had to offer to my coaching clients, I would be out of business very, very quickly, which means that occasionally, even sometimes during the same session with the same client, we may tap into mentorship and giving advice. And this is why the intersection of coaching, mentoring, and advisory, and coaching being the prominent modality of the three, is what makes a certified transition coach. I was on a call for MCCs just earlier last week, and one of the MCCs pointed out a particular ICF competency that speaks to the fact that with the permission of your client, you're actually allowed to share a piece of advice with them. And that was interesting for me also to see. So that's the first thing I wanted to say to you. And again, I mean, if you look at it through the individual lens, if you look at it through the organizational lens, or if you look at it through the stakeholder lens, there are multiple benefits to be had when the executive and the company really want to get this right. You not only save yourself a ton of money as a company, you not only give the right signal as a board of directors to the leadership of the company that you have the support and you support those executives in transition, but you actually are paying a dividend at the individual level. And of course, if a CEO is engaged and highly motivated guess what he or she can deliver for you and your shareholders in return. So it's really a no-brainer case as to why it makes sense to invest in this modality, both as an individual and as an organization. All right. So let me see what else I have in store for you. Yes, the double diamond framework is the one I wanted to share. So first things first, I could spend, and John, I'm sorry, I could spend 90 minutes just doing this one slide, right? And I do appreciate we probably do not have the time to do that, which is why I am really going surface level, and I'm not going to do justice to this wonderful framework. First things first, you see the first 90 days here as the second phase, right? This is the answer to the question I get all the time. Why not just take the first 90 days? Why can't we just use that and then be good? If you see that this framework consists of 7 phases and roughly lasts 12 to 18 months, you see that the first 90 days is only 1/7 of the equation. So that is my short answer as to why not just focus on the first 90 days and be happy. The second reason this phase I actually choose as the second phase and not as the very first phase. Let's just assume, I hope that's okay, Anjana. You were to become the successor to Magdalena Nook, okay? The board of directors has selected you as a capable chapter president, and you will be succeeding Magda Nook in her current position as the CEO of ICF Global. Now, it is beyond me why you or anyone else in that current circumstance would just want to sit on their hands, waiting patiently until day one. Let's say 1st of July is the appointment date, to start to run like crazy and then stop running after 90 days. What you can do as soon as the announcement has been made, let's assume the announcement has been done as part of International Coaching Week, you could start to reach out to Magda because she knows that you're the incoming CEO and he will be taking over from her. And you could have a very structured, meaningful conversation with the incumbent to really learn from them. And I think Magda is a great example because she has been in the role for as long as I have been a credential coach. I don't know how long she's been actually in the role, probably longer than I have been a credential coach, which is 12 years. To learn all the tips and tricks from someone who has been there and done that. The second thing you could do, obviously with Magda's consent, is to start to reach out to the leadership team that you will be inheriting. You could introduce yourself, start to answer their questions to satisfy their curiosity and their questions they have about the incoming leader. And at the same time, you could start to make up your own mind about the leadership team members that you will be inheriting in your new position. And let's face it, I do happen to know that that's the case with ICF Global, but it's probably also true with every organization out there. They have what they call their leadership team offsites. And sometimes they have them once a year, sometimes 4 times a year, twice a year, whatever their cadence is. Let's say in the middle of June, there is the annual strategy offsite planned with ICF Global Board of Directors. It would be foolish, Anjana, if you did at least not raise your hand to say, can I please take part in that exercise? Because let's face it, whatever they're going to come up with, you will have to deliver on anyhow in terms of member growth and geographic footprint growth and whatever other growth plans they have. But more importantly, you will get meaningful interactions with fellow board members who, in a way, will become your line managers going forward. So you see, there are so many things that executives can do before they are being appointed, which is the great work of a gentleman I cite here. His name is Michael Burrows, and he wrote a fabulous book called Before Onboarding. All the things you can do before you're technically in the position, but as an incoming senior leader. And it's beyond me why this book never got to the same level of fame as the first 90 days, because that book is worth its weight in gold. Now, you see, these are the 7 phases that ultimately make up the double diamond framework. Every one of these phases, if you were to read my book or if you were to download the workbook that is included in the paperback and hardcover edition, not in the ebook. If you were to download the workbook, you will see that every one of these phases is described in broad terms, what to expect during the discover phase, both based through research, but also through the many C-suite interviews I've conducted. But most importantly, every one of these phases will have laid out for you as the coach or as the executive the typical challenges and typical derailers that I have cited in the research to be true in each of those 7 phases. And now over to you, dear executive. What are the typical challenges and derailers that you see and you expect to be confronted with in your position based on everything you happen to know? And more importantly, let us work through a session or two around what might be some of the mitigation strategies you want to put in place so that you do not fall into those traps, or that you do not start to walk on those landmines that are laid all over the place for you. One more slide on the double diamond, and then I want to come back to how I go about high ticket offers, which is the other aspect of the double diamond. See, if you wanted to buy an actual diamond, there are the 4 or 5 C's that make sure that you invest money wisely. But if you wanted to take the same analogy with the double diamond and invest wisely in your upcoming transition, these are the 5 C's that I would recommend you to focus on, both as a coach and as an executive. Context, culture, commitments, circles, and confidence. Again, the way I use this tool is that I broadly describe to the leader what these are all about. And then the homework is using the same workbook to go back and reflect on what are some, and bullet points will suffice here. What are some of the bullet points they want to point out about the new context of this new position that may also be similar to the new company, if it's a new company for them as well, that they have to bring to their attention. What about the culture? What is uniquely different about this culture and this role / organization that is different from the culture that they got the big promotion from? And so the way this works is that I will then coach them around those 5 C's and have them to come up with their own mitigation strategies so that, again, they don't walk on all the landmines that are laid out for them. And we can hopefully guide them a little more skillfully through what is arguably the people, culture, and politics that is one of the biggest risks to their upcoming transition. Now, I have spoken far too much about transition coaching, frameworks, and the like. And now I would like to share with you my top 4 tips on how I go to market high ticket coaching to both executives and their organizations at the same time. So first things first, imagine you are walking down the high street and you see the green, shiny Starbucks logo. It's buzzing with activity. This corner store, typically they are in the highly frequented areas of the high street. They really pay a lot of money to make sure that they have the most footfall, is the right word, in the retail industry. You look at the menu, it's a mile-long menu. Caramel frappuccinos, iced lattes, matcha teas, cold brews, breakfast sandwiches. Starbucks has something for almost everyone, right? Next time you are actually walking into Starbucks, I invite you to do the following. You see they have the digital displays on the top of the counter where they have the products on display. Because they have so many products, unlike McDonald's or Burger King, they have to rotate the number of items like a slideshow because they can't fit it all in on the 4 or 5 screens they have above the counter. Now, imagine you are Italian, so Starbucks is a no for you. You walk a little further and step into this beautiful, small Italian cafe. The menu is simple: expertly brewed espresso, velvety cappuccinos, and if you are lucky, on that day, you will get a homemade baked teeny tiny biscotti that is going to melt on your tongue. No noise, no distractions, no 5 rotating screens, none of that. Simply the best coffee you've ever had. Starbucks thrives because it's built for scale. In a way, it's good enough for the masses. But the Italian cafe, they are built for those that want something exceptional. Now, my humble suggestion, this is my first of the 4 tips for you. Do not try to be a Starbucks. And quite frankly, you don't need to be. You do not need a menu with 28 options or a coaching marketing strategy that tries to attract half of the high street that is walking past you. When you focus, you don't just stand out, but you become the place people can't wait to visit. When I'm at the ICF UAE coaching cafes, when we have those monthly meetings, I just for the fun of it, I ask in my roundtable, what is your specialization? And when I then hear back, I'm an executive coach, or I'm a life coach, I will say, sorry, but that's not a specialization. That's a broad category, right? It's like to say, I'm a GP. Well, I know what a GP does. It's a ton of different things. But if someone tells me I'm a dentist and I've specialized in early childhood dental diseases, that's what I call a specialization strategy. That's the Italian cafe compared to a Starbucks. Second top tip I have for you is to think of the concept of abundance rather than thinking about a fixed mindset or scarcity. Now, before I set up my newsletter, I actually set out and spoke to a bunch of quite successful newsletter owners. So other people who have their very successful newsletters. And I had the two routes to choose from. One is the paid route, which means that there will be a monthly fee, and that fee will make sure that those people get exclusive access to my best content. And the other route that I could choose from was, how about I offer my very best content entirely free of charge? What will be the downside of doing that? And by the way, when I say content, this is short form content, right? My book is still sold for money and all that. And so I'm talking about short form content. And I decided to go down that route. And I think that was probably the right call because, believe it or not, roughly 250K is what I make on LinkedIn alone through my newsletter. So these are random people that hit me up and say, hey, I want to hire you as my coach, or I'm the decision maker in company X and I am looking for a top coach for our incoming CEO. Would you be so kind to have a conversation with the incoming individual? The third top tip I have for you is to look at social proof. And again, if you have not connected with me on LinkedIn, now is the time to do that. But I want to say a few things here. Firstly, 4.5 years ago, this one slide would be entirely empty. It would be a blank white slide. I did not have an international best-selling book. I had not won a single award. Just for the fun of it, I spent 20 years working in the wonderful function of human resources. On the day I announced my retirement from my active duty as a corporate HR director, someone woke up and thought, actually, this guy is pretty good. Why don't we give him an award? It's the only award I won as an HR director in the 20 years that I did my work. Now, this one is very special because they named me HR's most influential practitioner. And it's a peer recognition award, which means a lot of fellow HRDs and CHROs actually filled out those crazy long templates and made the case as to why I deserve to win that title. But even as a coach, 8 years into my coaching practice, I did not have a single award coming my way. And so that's my encouragement for you. If you are doing a great job, and great work. Do keep at it, and eventually someone is going to come up and hit you up. Now, I find it more credible if someone else points out to the good work you do than if we were to do that ourselves. And my last tip for you is to be authentic and credible and leverage your unique experience. We have 39 people on the call today, myself included, and I would claim that every one of the 39 journeys we have taken to where we are today is uniquely different. My journey has been very international. I have been living and working in 5 countries. I have had the pleasure of working for some of the world's most admired companies, and I've invested over 100,000 euro in my own coach education and training. Now, that puts me in a particular category, but I have many coaches who come to me for the CTC who are middle managers or former middle managers. And as a result, they are specializing in helping middle managers to punch their way into senior leadership positions. So it's really speaking to their authentic background and the experience they have so that they can do what they are best capable of doing. Now, I want to share with you probably one more slide, which is if you are interested in becoming a certified transition coach, that is the one slide I can share with you here. And this one is really all about deciding whether this is the right path for you or not. So first things first, you will get access to my book, both in ebook and audiobook format. Then I will invite you to read or listen to it, and then you come online. You have to be a credentialed coach. So ACC is the minimum entry. Why? Because I do not teach anyone how to become a coach. Quite frankly, as I said, half of the people that come on my program are more competent coaches than I am. But I happen to be the subject matter expert on this particular niche. And this is why I share everything in that 2 half-day training course. And there's a lot of interactivity and connection between the coaches as well. It's really designed with a learning instruction designer that you learn everything you need to learn in order that you can go out and try this at a real client. So you will be asked to work with a coaching client. And once you have started to do that, all you need to do is to apply what you have learned into your coaching practice. 2 more times we will come together. And those are the so-called coaching transition coaching lab calls. No chatbots, no AI bots allowed, where you choose to bring dilemmas, challenges, and issues in applying this knowledge to your client. And if you are struggling for whatever reason, you bring the challenge to the room and you will get advice from your fellow peers. And I'm obviously also there to help you overcome that. And once it's all finished, so roughly 6 months after the training has concluded, you're asked to submit your coaching client case study. These are essentially 9 questions that I want you to answer. And if I deem that to be complete, I will issue you your digital certificate. Similar to the ICF credential, by the way, it's fully ICF accredited, meaning you will be looking at 30 CCEs. If you are a credentialed coach, you know that we need 24 core competency CCEs every 3 years, 3 of which have to be in the ethics function, which means we need 21 to renew every 3 years. This program provides you with 22, which means you have enough core competency CCEs to renew for a full 3-year cycle. Not only that, by investing in this particular program, you have earned yourself a credential that you can then tap into the highest modality of coaching. And then the last thing I wanted to say about all of this is the great work that ICF Oman has put in place, which is there is a particular discount available to those that want to go ahead. And that discount is mentioned here, which is a 30% discount if you did want to go ahead. And this is the code you need to apply if you are interested. And with that in mind, I would like to thank you for your time and use the remainder of the time we have to take any questions you may have.
We have a comment from Dr. Mike in the chat.
Right. Lifelong elite athletics coach here. I like your analogy, but I think I would say that getting pulled up to the next level when you reach the highest levels of sport is more about speed. The game moves faster and you must react more quickly, and complexity. Yes, Dr. Mike, that is correct. Look, the two immediate outcomes. So when I'm speaking to companies like Louis Vuitton, Moët Hennessy, who have brought me in and asked me to supply them with certified transition coaches because they have a lot of transition cases ongoing any given year. The two promises I make to those organizations and the executives is one around the reducing of the failure rate, right? And how do we promise that? By knowing what interventions work in which phase of the transition. The second promise I make is that I will promise to you that your executive, supported by me or one of the 72 CTCs that I've trained, Farzin is one of them, will be able to hit their targets 50% or more quickly than they would normally without the qualified support. And I will supply all the research and evidence for you to do that. So yes, it's absolutely correct that speed is also of importance, but speed alone is not the name of the game, but it's the combination of the various interventions that we put into practice to make sure that we reduce the derailment risk substantially, 50% or more, and we also make sure that the executive delivers a return on the initial investment that the organization has made into them. So I absolutely agree with you here.
Thank you.
Welcome. Other questions or comments? I see another one in the chat. Is transition coaching made to help organizations in transformation, or is it only focused on the career transitions? See, it's really hard. I mean, I have been myself in 5 large multinational companies. It's really hard for me to point out a single company where I have not seen major change and transformation coming my way. And I have worked for a number of companies as a coach now, a lot more than I have experienced myself. And again, even the good old behemoth companies like the oil and gas, they are going through substantial transitions and transformations. I mean, I worked with executives from BP and Shell at one point, and the new group chief exec had essentially rejig the entire organization, which meant that the 4 coaches that I was coaching at the time, that were part of the top 250 in the company, had suddenly to absorb an additional role next to their day job and do that on a permanent basis. So I think it's really hard to try to divvy up or find any organizations that are not going through transformation. But what we do with the transition coaching is to be very specific and support the top executives during the most vulnerable and critical career moments, which is the transition phase, the first 12 to 18 months after being appointed into the C-suite, or getting a substantial promotion that warrants this sort of a support. Okay. Ajit is asking, is transition coaching more effective pre-hiring? No, because it really looks at the 12 to 18 months at about the timeline the appointment is being made, which means it can start at the pre-hiring level up to 3 months. Typically, that's the first phase, discover, I call it. So it's minus 90 to day 0. But really, it really unfolds its full impact in the first 9 to 12 months after the executive has been appointed. So I would say if I look at it with a bit of a distance, most of the oomph and the impact is coming in the 6 of the 7 phases. And the first phase is important as well, but that's only 1 out of the 7. So I wouldn't agree with that assessment necessarily. Okay. Dr. Mike. The concept of coach of coaches is increasingly accepted in my circles, and the ROI is intuitive, but it still is difficult to convince organizations to invest. What is your best argument approach to resist this? Yeah, well, look, Mike, this is a real story. So LVMH, this lady, I won't mention her name, but she is the head of L&D, and she happened to listen to me on a podcast. I've done 106 podcast episodes as a guest in the 4.5 years my book has launched. And it's all inbound. I do not have a marketing agent or anyone. They are just getting out to me and inviting me. And she listened to one of these podcast episodes with me. That intrigued her interest. And she went online and ordered my book on Amazon. She read the book in the next 48 hours and she sent me a connection invite on LinkedIn. It sat on my inbox for 2 weeks because it was an exceptionally busy period of time. And after 2 weeks, I saw it, I accepted it. And then, as I always do, I went back with a courtesy note to say, thank you for reaching out. Here's the link to my newsletter. And by the way, is there anything specific you wanted to talk to me about? She came back and said, yes, I would like to talk to you about this topic. 9 months after that, she actually came to Dubai to deliver a training herself. And that was our moment. It was at the Mandarin Oriental here in Jumeirah. It was our moment to sit down and talk about the fact that they have 220,000 employees, of which 950 are the top execs, of which 30 to 50 are going through a career transition any given year. And she just could not believe that they had not done an actual program for those top execs, which obviously now is part of what I do for them. So I set up the training program with their own support. So we co-created the 3-day in-person program. I supplied them with 10 certified transition coaches because they said that's now the bar. We don't want random coaches with random kind of experience levels to come in. We want all to use the same double diamond, the same kind of proven concept. And now that is a forever client. So I promise to you, if I had pitched to them my concept, if I had tried to convince them that this is a meaningful investment, I would still probably be sitting here and thinking about when are they going to sign up. So sometimes our clients need to come to a realization on their own. And the best way we can to do that or help them do that is to be passionate and authentic about what we know to be true and let them make that judgment call as to whether this is a good ROI in terms of their investment and it's worth their investment in terms of the L&D budget.
Thank you.
Welcome. And Jana, I think we are almost at the time, so I would like to hand the microphone back to you and to thank you again for having me around. I hope this was what you and the members had in mind when you reached out and said, come and speak to us about transition coaching.
Thank you so much. I have just 2 quick things to do. I have put a feedback link in the chat. Please request the participants to fill it up if possible now. And also to put your cameras on so that we can take a picture, while also inviting the Oman chapter of ICF President, Carolyn Phillips, to give us a quick vote of thanks. I know we're at the top of the hour and Carolyn has to jump to another meeting.
Thank you, Anjana. You want us all to multitask here, 3 things at once. No, Coach Navid, thank you so much. Thank you for this informative session on executive transition coaching. I particularly thought the double diamond framework really gave us an insightful lens on navigating executive transition. So your passion for this truly comes through. Your expertise for this truly came through. So thank you again from our hearts for your time and your expertise here. And a huge shout out to all of those participants here today who came on for this session. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for chipping in with invaluable comments, insightful comments. And I really hope you can come on for a few more sessions that we're doing all through this week. Farzeen and Anjana, what can I say? You ladies blow us all away. Thank you so much for putting all of this together. And with that, I really wish everyone here a truly valuable learning experience over the next 7 days. And Coach Navid, I'm sure we can call upon you anytime. if we
Of
need
course we
to.
can. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
again,
for the
everyone.
invitation.
Thank you so much for your support. God bless and be safe.
Thank you so much, everyone. We hope to see you for our next session tomorrow, which is by Dr. Debbie Silber, The Stuck Client Solution, Spotting the Betrayal That's Sabotaging Your Coaching Results. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.